Hi everyone. In the previous modules, Dr. Mazumdar elaborately discussed the reasons, or to say the barriers, for the underrepresentation of women in higher positions in academic structure. In this module, we will try to delineate the rationale for having a gender-inclusive academic leadership. If we look closely at our university structures, the underrepresentation of women in leadership position has its detrimental ripple effects across countries and communities. The advantages of having diverse perspectives with special focus on including women's voices has been documented and emphasized. Here, we will try and talk about few of the main reasons for the need to have this kind of diversity. Women in leadership positions have long thought to have the potential to pave the way for long-term changes by influencing aspirations. It has been argued that female academic leaders can influence career aspirations and education attainment of young women and might also eventually inspire them to take up leadership roles. This is possible through two main channels. First, by undertaking policies that make it easier for women to succeed and thereby changing beliefs on what is possible for these young minds. Second, by providing a mighty role model of successful women to younger female generation who may then want to follow their lead. Presence of a positive role model can go a long way in bringing about a qualitative change in aspirations and educational outcomes of young learners. So, gender diversity is vital to higher education leadership. It is more likely that fruitful developments and positive transformation will occur due to the diverse nature of ideas and experiences, which is not really possible with gender homogeneous leaders. But the question which comes here is how? How can women bring diversity to the table? There are experiences which are unique to women. For example, women can use their lived experience of being mothers to understand a particular situation at hand. So, to say basically, female academic leaders have the tendency to identify and address different queries than their male counterparts. They can add different perspectives, different standpoints, and also provide alternative solutions to issues which might not be possible in an all-male team or leadership environment. We also need to understand the role universities play in molding young minds and future leaders of the world. A gender diverse environment in educational institutions will set a model example, not only for girls, but also for boys to pursue their future endeavors accordingly. Thus, the need for equality as well as diversity in educational sector across discipline is nothing but obvious. A strong and diverse higher education system is imperative to contribute towards the country's ability to compete in global marketplace. For innovation and productivity to occur, this diverse leadership and workforce is an essential. But as we have been discussing in this module and the previous modules, this kind of diversity more or less is absent in higher ranks of education system. Moving on, another reason which is important for us to understand that why we need more women for meaningful roles in higher ranks is because of the way they have changed. If we look at the current discourse around leadership, there has been a radical shift in the ways by which individuals lead. This shift is majorly the result of the participation of women in higher leading roles. So earlier, if we see, leadership was more from a top-down and a hierarchical approach, where leaders made all the decisions and their power, their authority was the prevalent one. But if we see today leadership styles are more about collaboration, communication, sharing of power in decision making, and improving relationships. Basically, a democratic philosophy is contemplated as more ethical and appropriate, where everyone's opinion is valued, shared, considered, and a communal environment is cultivated and most importantly, encouraged. The reason behind women leading this shift is the way they approach work. Women tend to work at a very steady pace, and owing to their domestic realities, they're also comfortable with unexpected difficulties. Women also care about activities which are not directly related to work. They try to cultivate and preserve professional and social networks, relationships, and focus on what we call ecology of leadership. Now, ecology of leadership is a social perspective which is embedded, or to say is encompassed in their leadership schema. An ethical angle with the intention to benefit the society as a whole is at the core of this leadership style. This actually helps in creating an environment for information sharing with others. This ethic of sharing is a significant facilitator in keeping the women leaders as the center of things rather than at the top. Because it is more natural to reach out rather than to reach down. Now, this is what we call is the female notion of being in middle of things, so that a connection through invisible but strong threads can be established. This whole idea of being connected to everyone becomes more interesting when we understand this idea through a phenomena called systemic thinking or systems thinking. Now, by definition, systemic thinking is an interrelated structure fabricated around a central point. To make it a little easy to understand, we may actually imagine anatomy of an atom. So systemic thinking is just like the importance of nucleus to an atom built of radials and orbs. So everything is interconnected, everything is related, and a strong central point keeps the structure stable and centered. Just like that, just like this anatomy of atom, women in leadership positions can structure things. Companies, office spaces, human relationships, even their own presumed place in the universe. This aids in acknowledging the fact that everything, every problem, every issue is interconnected, and situations must be examined as a systemic whole. Rather than examining situations as independent parts or mere average or sum of parts, it is important to understand situation as a systemic whole. So that way, systemic thinkers will first look at the bigger picture and then mine in deeper to study its parts. And finally, they will then concentrate on the interactions and relationship between those parts. Also, women have this ability to see their job as one component of who they are as a person, unlike most of the men who try to identify them solely based on their job profiles. So, as a way of summing up, we can argue that having more women leaders in academia will not bring diversity only by inspiring young minds, but having more women leaders can also make sure that we have alternative ways of leadership. But again, to make this happen, we need to have more concrete measures. So in the next module, we will try and focus upon some of the policy recommendations which can help ascribe more leadership roles to women.